Take a breath. Welcome to Space to Exhale, the podcast, weekly inspiration for self-love and soft living. I am your host, Lisa Hurley. I'm a 3-time Anthem Award winner, Reiki master, and community builder. And I'm the author of the book Space to Exhale. Through healing modalities like breathwork, affirmations, and meditations, I'll guide you on a life-changing journey to help you know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, and create much-needed space to exhale. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Space to Exhale, the podcast, a safe, serene sanctuary where we focus on high vibrations, affirmations, soft living, and self-care. I am your host, Lisa Hurley. I'm the author of Space to Exhale, a handbook for curating a soft, centered, serene life. And I'm here to help us all do just that. Take a breath, relax, say no to hustle culture, and yes to a life of ease. My hope and dream is for us all to curate lives that we don't feel we need a break from. Today, I'll be joined by a very special guest, Amira Barger. Amira K.S. Barger, MBA, CVA, CFRE, is an award-winning Executive Vice President and Head of DEI Advisory at Edelman, the world's largest global communications firm. With over 20 years of experience in strategic communications, she specializes in health equity, corporate branding, reputation management, M&A counsel, media relations, sustainability, and DEI. So just a couple of things, right, Amira? Just a few things. Amira is also a professor of marketing, communications, and change management at California State University, East Bay, and a guest lecturer at Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. A recognized thought leader and scholar practitioner, she has earned accolades including 2024's Women of the Year by Women Healthcare Executives and being named a top 50 global DEI professional by On Conferences. Amira writes on Black women in the workplace, Black motherhood, and workplace inclusion, contributing to outlets like MSNBC and Fast Company. She lives in Benicia, California, with her partner, daughter, and 2 rescue dogs, which I love, and is on a mission to visit all 417 U.S. national parks. So welcome, Amira. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be with you. I'm so grateful.
Of course. And I know that you've watched and listened to a couple of these. And of course, we have some of our regular listeners with us. For those of you who are new to the show, we start each show off by taking a collective exhale. So we take a few breaths together, we get grounded, we get focused, and then we go into the conversation. So let's take our moment to exhale. Close your eyes if that's what you wish to do. Get as relaxed as possible. If you're seated, see if you can feel where your body is connecting with the chair behind your shoulders and back and under your thighs. And start relaxing. Bring your shoulders down. Release the tension from your forehead, from your jaw, even from your eyelids. And now let's inhale through our nose and exhale. And again, inhale and exhale. And one more time. Inhale and exhale. And before we get into the conversation, the next thing that we do every episode is we ground ourselves also with an affirmation. And because we have the queen of telling us, don't focus on being so nice, right?
Yes.
Right. Amira's book is called The Price of Nice. And so, of course, the affirmation is around that theme. So today's affirmation is, in the spirit of self-love, I am choosing to be kind, not nice. And so I want you to let that percolate through your minds, through your brains, through your spirits and body and cells and energy bodies, as Amira and I have this amazing conversation. I am so looking forward to this. And you're actually in for a treat today because Amira is going to read us a little excerpt from her book that's going to come up in a while. I'm very excited. But yeah, Amira, let's get started. So, of course, I'm an author, and I am naturally a fan of any other author. And so my first question is, so why this book? Why now? Like, is there a nicest crisis that we, like, the rest of us don't know about? Like, tell us what your inspiration is for writing The Price of Nice.
Yes. First, yes, we are living in a niceness crisis. And this book is a reflection of a life of unlearning and relearning niceness and the antithesis of nice, which we're going to get to. And I've been milling on this book for at least 12 years, if not the entirety of my life. And so I'm so proud that my little book baby is going to be out in the world on the 28th of October. But I wrote it because I was tired of being told to be palatable when what I wanted to be was powerful. And I truly believe that we have mistaken being nice for being good, for being just, for being kind. And that confusion, I posit, is costing us dearly. And my inspiration came from watching how much harm gets excused or overlooked in workplaces, in communities, in places of worship, in our homes and communities, because people didn't want to make a scene, didn't want to ruffle feathers or rock the boat. And I even think about the moment we're in right now. If we were to zoom out at the political climate, for example, especially both during and even after the first set of the Trump years, we've seen how calls for civility have been weaponized to silence real critique, while blatant cruelty is being normalized. And that disconnect has showed me and many others just how dangerous niceness can be when it becomes a shield for power. And at the same time, we're seeing glimmers of what it looks like to choose nerve instead of nice. I think about leaders like Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, or even, I'm based in California, many people know our governor, Gavin Newsom. They both use plain language, unflinching truth, and unapologetic conviction to call things what they are. And those are the kinds of models that we need right now. And I wrote this book because I want us to stop performing civility at the expense of truth and change, because niceness is comfort. That's what it's about. Nerve, which is the antithesis of nice, not mean. Nerve is change, and change is actually what we need right now. So I wrote a whole book about it.
I love that. When I hear the word nerve, I think of courage and bravery and boundaries and what one might call in the culture, like standing 10 toes down.
Yes.
That's what comes to mind when I hear the word nerve. So I'm
You
so
got
glad
it.
that you've created a sort of a new, almost linguistic model around, because I don't know that I've ever actually sat down and thought, okay, what is the opposite of nice?
Yeah, most people haven't.
Yeah. No, this is good. I love that. Nice versus nerve versus nice. So thank you for that. So I remember, okay, so I read, I got an early copy of your book. Thank you very much. And I remember some of the, like in the early part of the book, you talk about, I don't remember the exact anecdote, but basically you said something, you're with your family, right? I remember this part, you're with your family and you, listen, I'm the same person. I'm like, wait, these are my people. you said something that quote unquote was on ice. Was it like a kid's party? Was it, what was involved?
It
Right.
it was from
Remind us all.
childhood, yeah, and it's actually the excerpt I want to read for folks later today about sort of I go back to little 9-year-old Amira and that
Yes.
first moment in early childhood where I realized what nice is. And as I was writing this book, my publisher asked me to think back to those moments, like why nice? Why has this stuck with you such that you wanted to and pitched a whole book about niceness?
Mhm.
And I think many of us, those early moments of childhood that have shaped us, those core memories and core lessons, still guide us so much today. And for me, it was little 9-year-old Amira and that first recognition of what nice in this world actually means versus maybe the dictionary definition or the way we're socialized to believe what nice is. There was just this visceral moment in my mom's bedroom on the floor with some little girlfriends and my sisters that brought to life what nice is and the cost of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I understand that because, especially as somebody who I didn't know I was neurodivergent growing up, but I know now.
Mm.
And so I look back and I'm like, oh, this is why you're always like about justice and things have to be right and they have to make sense. And I want logic. I'm like, but I remember my equivalent of your story was when I asked my I asked loudly at church, asked my parents why the priest's car was bigger than everybody else's,
Mm.
and how come he has the nicest car? Because I don't know. I don't even know if I fully thought it through. I was like, but
I love it.
we're putting in money all this time. Where's this money going? Because he looks like he's living large. And I'm telling you, I must have been, we were still living in Trinidad. So I knew I was younger than the age of 7 when these are the kinds of thoughts. So when I read that part of your book, I'm like, oh, I relate to this. And I got the sort of, not an actual rap on the knuckles, but a verbal one.
Mm.
Shh, you can't say things like that. So I fully and completely relate.
Love it.
So like as an adult, talking, Lord, excitement. We have talking. Listen, guys, I'm telling you, I have written a book. I do know English, but I'm excited. So we have talking and spoken.
That's right.
Right. Talking and spoken about sort of like your first exposure to niceness or having to be nice as a child, but as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Were your first clues that niceness was costing you more than it was serving you?
Definitely early career. That is when, I realized that when I stayed quiet to keep the peace, that the harm didn't go away. It just got redirected, usually back towards me or to someone else who didn't have as much power. And, I was praised for early on in my career for being easy to work with. And that praise masked the reality that my dignity and my authenticity were actually being chipped away at. And that's when I knew that niceness had a price tag and that it was actually something I did not want to be known for. And I had spent so much of my life leaning into that. I actually, my late mother-in-law, she used to call me precious, sweet Amira, almost as if it were my government name. Yeah. And
I kind of love it,
that.
but I also understand where that can almost become like its own heavy mantle to wear. Yeah.
Yes. It comes with an expectation and it comes with what I started to do, which was to perform to it in every aspect and facet of my life. And other people started to call me it as well. And I leaned into that for much of my adult life and much of my early career. And, what it meant was maintaining the status quo. It meant becoming a shrinking violet and being silent when I really did have something to say or to share or to challenge. And I didn't do those things. And it took a toll. I didn't recognize it at first. It was sort of a somatic toll, right? There was this feeling internally, physically, but also mentally that I didn't quite recognize. And so it was the early career years where I think there's this stark experience of power differential, right? You're the lowest part of the totem pole and there are others in power who make decisions. And that creates, I think, this fishbowl of an experience where you really start to see the price of playing small, playing silent, and being easy to work with. Someone who doesn't have thoughts and opinions, who doesn't challenge, who doesn't disrupt. It comes at a cost.
Yeah, because like the title of the famous book says, the body keeps the score. And
Yes.
so if you don't speak out, if you don't express, and speak doesn't mean shout, although shouting is necessary. Sometimes shouting is necessary. It doesn't mean shout. It doesn't mean be angry. It just means express, right?
Yes.
If you, what you don't express remains internalized for sure, and it shows up as stress and disease and all kinds of other, inflammation and immune system, compromised immune systems, sleep disruption. There's a whole litany and list of basically health impacts that
Yes.
niceness and masking and not having the nerve to speak up will that those are the results. And so this is your story, or started as your story, but like many books, I feel like the individual at some point you realize, wait, my story is actually not everyone's story, but a lot of people's story, right? Or other people could benefit from what I know. When did you realize that it was more than just you, and that niceness had become a survival strategy for you and other Black women and femmes navigating white dominant institutions?
So early on, I actually started, many people don't know my career before I was in corporate America in the nonprofit sector. And the nonprofit sector, for those who are in it, it is usually, I think it's still over 70% women. And oftentimes many of these organizations, at least at a program staff level or an early staff level, are representative of the different communities that are served, which tend to be Black and brown communities. And so very early on, I saw sort of the impacts of niceness in the workplace and what it did to those of us who didn't have as much decision making or as much power within these institutions. And, I think you mentioned Black women and femmes in particular. For us, niceness has never been optional. It's always been mandatory. And historically, our survival has depended on making ourselves palatable, safe, and non-threatening to white or dominant institutions and leaders. And that conditioning, I would say, goes all the way back to enslavement, Jim Crow, and even beyond, where our humanity was only tolerated if it was packaged as either servitude or silence. And there are still remnants of that. And so we've been trained to perform survival. And that means oftentimes lowering our voices so we aren't labeled angry, smiling through microaggressions so we aren't seen as difficult, over delivering at work. This is a big one for me, constant overachiever, right? We over deliver so that no one can question our worth. We say yes when our bodies are screaming no, because the risk of resistance has always been higher for us than for others. And those are the daily and exhausting acts of survival and calculations that niceness demands of Black women and femmes in the workplace, in communities, in our homes, and in our places of worship as well.
Wow, amazing. I mean, you're so right. I definitely see the historical link from what I've decided to call the nicest epidemic, but right. But yeah, I see the link between the period of enslavement and now, because it definitely was all about survival, and survival depended on making white people feel safe, making white people feel superior.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, the survival involved shrinking, either physically shrinking or shrinking our voices.
Yeah.
And being nice. And talking about smiling through microaggressions. I mean, imagine having to smile through the wet nurse to some white woman's baby, and you can't even nurse your own child, but you have to smile.
You have to smile. We still hear that today, don't we? Just smile more. And we are taxed doubly, triply sometimes when we don't perform to
Yeah,
expectations of silence and smiling and playing nice, as it were.
absolutely. And so, folks, we are at my personal favorite juncture in the show where Amira is going to actually read an excerpt from her book for us. And I am very excited for you to experience this. Um, it's a good book. It is a good book. Amira, I really love your voice, your personality comes through. Yes, there is, all there's the scholarship and all the practical things that are needed. Um, and that makes it a full and robust work. It really does. But I just love your personality that comes through. You know, it's not a dry book. It's an interesting book. I love it. So it's amazing. So thank you for blessing us with this. So Amira, over to you. I'll remove myself from the stage, and it is over to you.
Beautiful. Well, this excerpt I'm going to read for folks is actually the preface of the book, which is, pre-introduction and pre-chapter 1. And so some people skip over the preface, but you're going to love this one. So make sure you read the preface. But that is the excerpt I'm going to read that takes you back to that early childhood moment when I first recognized nice for what it is. So here we go. I'm an 80s baby, but the 90s raised me. I grew up with parents who maintained discipline through sharp looks, heavy sighs, a raised eyebrow that could stop you mid-sentence, and the occasional swift rebuke to the backside. Nice wasn't a suggestion, it was a non-negotiable demand. And for much of my life, I lived up to it. I was known to many as precious, sweet Amira. In fact, my husband's late mother, Pearl, used to enthusiastically address me by that title as if it were my full name. I leaned into the persona, wearing it like a badge of honor, but that existence came with a price. The problem was, nice never quite fit me. It was an unrelenting tug of war between the suffocating expectations of the daughter I was supposed to be and the daughter I truly was, the one who asked questions, wanting to be heard, not just seen. For a long time, it was a trap I couldn't figure out how to free myself from. Growing up, doing things for the gram didn't yet exist. The one surefire way to showcase that you just live your best life on a summer adventure somewhere was what we called vacation hair. And if you know, you know. It screamed, I went somewhere fabulous and I need you to know it. My sisters and I had two best friends, blonde-haired, hazel-eyed twins who were fixtures at our house and we at theirs. The twins would return from vacation every summer, grinning ear to ear with braided cornrows, beads clacking together, and painfully sunburned scalps. But soon their cornrows were more like frizzy haystacks, and they'd be sitting cross-legged on my mom's bedroom floor, begging her to fix it. Can you braid it like theirs? They'd ask my mom, pointing at me and my sisters. My mom would sigh, shake her head slightly, and get to work. As she'd done 1,000 times before, she'd pull out her comb, part the twins' fine blonde hair into sections, and start braiding while they squirmed, winced, and squealed. Ouch, that's too tight. Why does it hurt so much? Does it hurt like this when your hair gets done too? Is my hair falling out? I think my hair is falling out. Standing in the doorway, brow furrowed, I watched the twins act like they were being tortured. Have you ever seen in cartoons where the character is trying to make a decision with an angel on one shoulder and a demon on the other, both trying to give advice? I spent most of my life trying to choke out that little demon voice. But that day, I was done with the drama. It was too much, and the dark side took over. It felt like an out-of-body experience. As if channeling the wisdom from an ancestral Black auntie, I matter-of-factly blurted out, "It's because your hair isn't made for braids." The room fell silent amidst a collective gasp. My mom froze, hands mid-braid, with an unmistakable look that conveyed all she needed to. I could almost hear her gritted teeth through, "Amira, I know you didn't just say that." My youngest sister stifled a giggle while the rest looked on with pity, imagining the whooping I was going to get later. One of the twins whipped her head around so fast, beads went flying everywhere. Her eyes wide, her mouth open, her expression a mixture of shock, hurt, and confusion. But I wasn't done. I crossed my arms, I shrugged, and with all the self-righteous confidence I can muster, I said, well, it's not for you. That's why your head hurts so much. Amira, my mom snapped. That's not nice. The twins just stared at me. I stopped off to the next room to await my fate. My mom sighed, muttered something under her breath, and finished fixing their braids. Even from the other room, I'm sure I heard the twins whispering dramatically about how mean I was. After they went home, my mom pulled me aside and delivered the scolding I knew was coming. Amira, she said, serious mom tone fully activated. You can't just say things like that, even if they're true. And there it was, the price of nice, a lesson ingrained in many of us as kids. Being nice is more important than being real. No matter how right you are, if it makes someone uncomfortable, you are the problem. Looking back, I now realize I could have handled the situation differently. I love the twins like they are my own flesh and blood. And even 30 plus years later, we are all still sisters in every way that matters. If only little Amira had the proper tools at her disposal. For example, I didn't know about concepts like the matching principle, which might have helped me assess the kind of conversation I was in and how to respond accordingly. So quickly summarized, we typically have 3 conversations as humans. First, practical conversations focused on solving problems or making plans. Second, emotional conversations about sharing feelings and seeking empathy. And third, social conversations centered on connection and identity. That day in my mom's room, I was locked into practical mode. I almost always am. September Virgo here. Do you want to feel better? Your head hurts because braids aren't for your hair type. Stop getting braids, duh. But the twins, they were experiencing an emotional conversation. They wanted empathy. The little 9-year-old Amira, I couldn't fathom how, oh, you poor thing, I'm so sorry your head hurts, was any type of solution. Now, I still think I was right, even if I could or should have responded differently. But the lesson of that moment wasn't about my attitude in the face of unwitting cultural appropriation. It was about my conditioning to align with the world's expectations. It was precedent setting, the first knot in a lifetime of lessons I'd have to learn to unbraid. Their discomfort wasn't my fault, but knowing that truth isn't enough. And I'll stop there.
Wow. So good, so good, so good.
Thank you so much.
So much of that it just resonates, the whole braiding exercise, the sharp look that your mom
Yeah.
like the daggers from her eyes. I like that. I can see it and feel it. We've, like you said, if you know, right?
That's right.
So definitely resonate with those cultural experiences, and again also with, you're 9, you have no idea, you're trying, you're like, but this doesn't make sense, and if you want your head to stop hurting, then stop getting
right,
and it's perfectly logical.
It is, but
but there is nuance, and I appreciate you. I mean, obviously now as an adult, you realize that there is nuance, and maybe you could even have said the same thing but phrased it differently.
That's right.
But I'm glad that you and the girls are still friends.
Yeah.
Very, very, very happy about that. So we have been sort of dabbling in the world a bit in the conversation so far about definitions, kind and nice and nerve and so on. So I want to dig into this a little bit more. And can you define the differences between kindness, niceness, and nerve? I know you told us a bit about that before, but I want people to experience all 3 together as you explain for us.
Oh, absolutely. So Kindness to me is rooted in action and care, and niceness is rooted in comfort and compliance, and nerve is about challenge and disruption. And so this was a tweet, I think back in 2015, that I felt really like hit the nail on the head of the difference between nice and kind specifically. And I'm okay with this as a native Californian, because it was the difference between Californians and New Yorkers. So someone had tweeted that, Californians are nice. If you're outside, you're shivering outside, you didn't bring a coat, and you say something like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so cold, I forgot a coat." A Californian who is nice might walk up to you and say, "Oh my gosh, it's so cold, I feel so bad for you." They've said something empathetic, they've sympathized with you, but then they've walked on and moved on.
Walked on while wrapped up in their own coat.
That's right. A New Yorker on the other hand,
they have a spare coat in their bag, but you're not getting that coat. But they've been nice.
Getting that coat. They're moving on. But they said, a New Yorker, on the other hand, they might be gruff about it. "You're stupid. Why are you outside without a jacket on? What's wrong with you?" And then they take their jacket off their back and they hand you theirs. That is kindness. It's action. It may not sound sweet, right? The New Yorker is going to be kind of gruff about it sometimes, but they actually did something to fix your problem, to keep you warm. They gave you the jacket off their back. And to me, that is the distinction. That was a great visual. I'm a very visual learner and I love stories. And so for me, I was like, yes, that's so true. Californians are nice, but New Yorkers are kind. And I thought that was the perfect explanation of it. Giving someone the jacket off of their back, that's kindness, because it's rooted in action.
In action. And I so relate to the New Yorkers are gruff but kind, because it was a struggle for me initially, like moving here from Barbados. And although I don't know, I have one of two faces, so to speak. So if I'm completely at rest, I do have a bit of RBF going on, but then my other face is always like smiley happy, right? And I was also I was raised to be nice and have and you're out in public. So I had like my public smile on and be walking through New York streets saying, and also I was also raised to greet people that you saw in the street, right? You don't just walk past somebody, you do a nod, and probably if, especially if they're your elder, you actually say, "Good morning, ma'am," or "sir," or whatever. Now imagine trying to do that walking through Times Square. Right, because just the number of people, it was sheer madness. I don't know what I was trying to do. So eventually I learned not to do that, because I realized also people thought this woman is just smiling and she's not mentally well, right? So bless her heart. But what I did observe was that a lot of these subways are actually not accessible. So they're all 2-3 flights of stairs at ridiculous angles. And sometimes there's like a mom or parent by themselves struggling up with the stroller. And more than once I've seen somebody sort of like almost like suck their teeth a little, like, "Let me help you with this." Right?
Yes, exactly.
They kind of like snatch it and take it up to the top of these stairs.
Like, "Let me just handle it.
Let me just do this. You're struggling. Let me just do this." Now, it does not come across pleasant.
Right.
But in fact, like you said, it solved the problem, because now the mom or dad or whoever, they're no longer struggling. Baby is safely at the top of the stairs. And they will, in all their impatience, they will wait at the top of the stairs until the mom or dad have reached there.
Yes.
And then, so baby is safe, but it's not pleasant, but it is very kind.
Right. And that's what I talk about so much in the book, is we have this obsession, I believe, with comfort, which is what I think niceness provides people. It's the comfort of it being said nicely or rosily, as opposed to what we really are looking for, which is the change, right? The change of having the jacket, the change of someone helping you with the stroll up the stairs, the action, the outcome of something is now better or different for you, even if it didn't come with that comfort, that niceness that we are conditioned to expect and to desire.
And speaking of action, let's get into to praxis, because I love that your book, it does explore theory, but you have actual practical solutions, including a framework called you call it the dimensions: think, feel, do, revisit. So tell us more about about that, about those four
Mhm.
elements of that this framework and the dimensions for creating change around niceness. Because this
Yeah,
is fascinating to me. I love it.
oh, good, good. It's not just a catchy model and an easy four-part thing to remember, but it's rooted in social psychology and communication theory. Many people know I spend my days as a communication strategist, and I harp on it all the time, but I talk about how words shape worlds, and our words truly do matter. And that's not just a quipped saying, it is a reality. And so a lot of this book, I hope, reaches and gets into the hands of communicators. And when I think about communicators, that's all of us. If you're a parent, you're a communicator. If you're a manager of people, you're a communicator. If you are a minister in a place of worship, you're a communicator. If you're an elected or appointed official, right, you're a communicator. Everyone can use the elements of this book. And the dimensions of think, feel, do, revisit are a very similar framework that we actually use in the world of communications and social psychology. And that's where I've borrowed it from. We know that behavior change, getting people to change their mind about an idea or to change a daily action, comes from a cycle of being aware, understanding how you're affected, taking action, and then reflecting. And so communicators, right, I use this sequence every single day to think
Wow.
about, how people get to think, that cognition, feel, the emotions, do the behavior, and the revisit, the reinforcement or sustainment of change. And so the think part is about naming patterns. In the workplace, you might ask, when you're thinking, is this me defaulting to niceness? And so an example would be in a meeting, someone sets an unrealistic timeline for you and your team. And instead of nodding to stay agreeable, maybe instead you think to yourself and you recognize, this is me about to say yes to protect the comfort in the room here. And I just want people to pause and to think and to ask themselves, am I defaulting to nice in order to not challenge, to not disrupt, and to recognize that pattern in yourself, in your workplace, and in others around you? Feel. That's about checking your body, that somatic element, right? To notice, am I shrinking? Am I silencing myself? Am I trying to smooth things over? And why? So you start to feel your chest tighten. And social psychology tells us that emotions are signals of incongruence, right? Okay, what's disconnected here? And that discomfort that you may feel is data. And that's what I want people to start to be able to recognize. Your body is flagging for you the cost of comfort, the cost of erasure, the price of nice, and to pause and to ask yourself, what do I feel in this moment? And what action can I take that is different? The do element is to choose action that aligns with your values, not just with maintaining comfort or the status quo of this is how things have always been done, or I don't want to risk rocking the boat. So rather than, sure, we'll make it work, you might say, that deadline risks overwhelming my team. So let's extend it by 2 weeks for us to actually get to the quality results I know you expect, right? That's cognitive dissonance at work. You're refusing to reduce discomfort by caving, and instead you're resolving it by taking aligned action to your values and to what will be best for others in the room and the outcome. And the last piece is revisit. That's about reflecting and recalibrating consistently, because unlearning and relearning, unlearning niceness and relearning something different, nerve, it's ongoing. It's that forever journey. So maybe later you ask, did my response match my values? And what might I try differently next time? And that is the feedback loop, you communicators, that we use and always build into what we're creating. We measure, we learn, and then we adjust with information and data. And so a lot of this is about reflection, and there's application that can certainly be individual, but you can also apply, think, feel, do, revisit institutionally across teams, across entire departments. And I often describe myself as a behavioral communications consultant, because it really is about how do you drive people to change their mind such that they change the actions they take or the behaviors that they participate in the world. And that's what creates the world that we all experience and get to live in.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this, just all this work that you've done, to help us move beyond the performative and into the practical. I am a big fan of verbs and actions, so I am all about it. And I especially love for the 4 dimensions of think, feel, do, revisit. I love all of them. I think revisit actually hits me the hardest, and I'll explain why. Because often
Mm.
consultants will come into a company, or they'll, management will have a meeting and sort of talk around what
Mm.
right?
Right,
Use
yep,
more words, like corporate Erin on
I
TikTok,
do.
right?
I do
Exactly.
love her.
I love her, the management, right? And so, they throw all the buzzwords at everyone. You have
Mhm.
no idea what actually happened. Nothing is solved. And
Yeah,
then, but because the meeting is on the books, they can check a box and say that they had a meeting,
that's
but
right.
nothing has actually changed. And so I like the revisit, because the initial work is done. They think, they feel, they do. But then, okay, let's check in. Let
Yes.
us revisit. Let us reflect. Let us analyze. Right? Look at some data, analyze how
Right.
effective this is being. And I really appreciate that, that you included that part of it. So, however, now as a Black woman in corporate, I definitely
Mm.
have had moments where I have just decided I can't, I just don't want any smoke today. I can't.
Same. I get it. I get it.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Because, many of us have experienced where we have resisted or said no, or chosen
Yeah.
nerve over niceness, or chosen kindness over niceness.
Yeah.
But then there's been retaliation. Can you speak to that a little bit more? Like, what happens when people who look like us refuse to play the part, refuse to be nice? Like, what happens when we say
Mhm.
no? And is it possible for us to powerfully say no and survive corporate? Frankly, is that
Mm.
possible?
Yes, and I think I talk to people a lot about how I choose to practice nerve at different levels on the dial. And
Hmm.
it's a calculus every day, every minute, it feels like every second of every minute of every hour of every day. And
Yes, I
sometimes
relate. I relate.
sometimes I practice nerve at a 2 on the dial, sometimes a 10, sometimes a 20 if you've really upset me.
Yes.
And I calculate that depending on the room that I'm in, the
Hmm.
allies I do or don't have access
Right.
to, the proximity to power I do or don't have access to. And it's a tiring and exhausting calculation, but it's one that we have to make when we have so many layers of identity. I'm a Black woman, but I'm also disabled, and there are all these layers, and many other people will have different layers of, neurodivergence, LGBTQ plus, all of the just different aspects of who we are that will change the calculus for you. And I think for many of us, as a Black woman who chooses nerve in the workplace, I'm, told I'm too ambitious, I'm intimidating, I'm difficult, I'm angry if I speak with conviction. And it is that double tax. You do the work and then you soften yourself so others feel comfortable with the fact that you did it. And the toll is heavy, and it shows up as stress, anxiety, and the constant vigilance of self-editing. And our bodies, like you said, keep the score of that pressure, like that book tells us. And so you don't do this work alone. My hope in writing a whole book about why nice is a problem and the cost of it is that the more people that have an awareness of the antithesis of nice being nerve, the more people will be ready to accept and be in a space to receive nerve. Because I think the visceral reactions to someone who dares to have nerve is because not enough people understand what it can do for the workplace, for the world, for the structures and institutions we all have to experience. And I hope that this brings more of that awareness to more people so that more of us are primed and ready to receive the nerve that many of us want and, quite frankly, need to
Yes.
practice in this world. And so don't do this alone. Find who your allies are. Determine if you're going to practice at a 2 or a 10, and that calculus will be very different depending. But you also have to know for yourself that there is a price, there's a cost to this. I have been walked to the door for my nerve, and I imagine it will happen again. And that is a cost that I have calculated and one I am comfortable with. And I believe that on the other end of it, you know, I will be able to look my 12-year-old daughter in the eyes. I will be able to look in the mirror at myself and know that I made the values aligned choice. And there's some privilege that comes with that, right? Some people, you don't have the luxury to lose your job tomorrow for practicing too much nerve, and that's okay. I don't want people to use these tools I'm offering to indict themselves. I want people to use them wisely. And so if today you practice nerve at a 1 or at a 0, that's okay, because there are other calculations and considerations. You know, sometimes I too have to pull back because I've got to pay for this house I live in. So it's like, nope, not today.
Not today. Exactly.
Money. And that's okay. And that's okay. And so, you know, that's why it is a constant cycle, the constant unlearning and relearning for each of us, depending on the privileges that you have, the allies that you have, and the stakes for you in that moment of practicing nerve.
Thank you so much. When I hear the word nerve, it's it also brings to mind another word that begins with N, which is no, right?
Yes.
At least that's what I hear. I hear that, because sometimes it is literally the nerve to say no, right?
Yes.
And so as I was sort of trying to think, okay, what excerpt will I read today? And I got an epiphany. I'm like, I know exactly what I'm going to read, because, of course, I'm all about boundaries too. And I'm all about boundaries because I have been the person without any, right? Because so I know both sides. I know what it feels like to basically allow yourself to be treated like a doormat, and the empowerment that comes from having the nerve to say no. And really like hold your line, hold your boundary. And so I'm going to read a brief excerpt from chapter 9 of Space to Exhale, and it is, of course, entitled Saying No. So your no is legendary. A good friend of mine once told me this, and it made me giggle. It made me sound fearsome, and I kind of liked it. It also made me feel proud of myself because, as I mentioned in the lack of boundaries section, I'm a recovering people pleaser. That my no has become a force to be reckoned with makes me happy. The goal is to curate lives filled with ease, grace, and abundance. And believe it or not, that often starts by saying no. The thing is, agreeing to do things that you don't really want to do never works out well. Neither for the recipient of your efforts nor for you. Ask me how I know. Not only does it siphon your physical and intellectual capacity, it also depletes your energy. Guilt, anger, resentment, and self-recrimination are not high vibrational states. If I ever start to feel guilty about saying no to someone, I remind myself that no is a powerful curatorial tool. It scalpels away all the unwanted stuff so you can focus on what you really care about and have capacity for. It also liberates the asker to find someone more available and aligned. No matter how bad I feel for saying no, it's nowhere as horrible as I feel for saying yes to something I don't have the capacity to do. I remember that every no to someone else is a yes to myself. If the time or the vibe do not align, say no. Say it with your chest and revel in the additional space you've created for yourself. There are times when the person you have to say no to is yourself. Our inner teenagers sometimes have us in a chokehold, saying yes to things you want to do, but know our bad idea does not serve your highest good. Shortly after I returned to work from my 6-month short-term disability leave, there was a huge conference for the culture I really wanted to attend, and I tried every which way to convince myself that I could make it. But the truth was, I couldn't, for multiple reasons. First, there was no way that I could rationally ask my employer for a week off to attend a non-work related conference, having just returned from being off for 6 months. Like, no. Second, even though I was in a much better physical and mental state than I had been at the beginning of my sabbatical, I was still not back to 100%. Far from it. Recovery is continuous. It would have been a setup for a setback if I had insisted on participating in a full week of outsideness, peopling, and networking. That would have been a classic case of dropping myself into overdrive and doing too much. So I put my inner teenager in a timeout, and my inner adult told her no. FOMO or no FOMO, it was absolutely the right decision. So honor your boundaries and protect your energy, sis. Say no. PS, see also nah. PPS, no is a full sentence. So yes, I am all for boundaries, right? I'm all for boundaries and having the nerve. I love your use of the word nerve. Having the nerve to stand up for yourself and draw a line.
I love it. I love it. So aligned. No is a superpower.
No, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. And it feels scary at first because we are, we're socialized to basically to be yes people, especially women, I
Right.
think. Right, right. We are socialized to say yes, to be nice, to be good little girls, right? And that often means just saying yes to things and to people and situations and experiences that we actually don't want to be involved in, that are even potentially harmful. And so being able to say no, even though it's scary, right? Even though it is scary, practicing a no, and practicing even, I would say, in low stakes moments. Like you said, sometimes having the nerve, it's at a 2, sometimes it's at a 10. If somebody is really looking for some smoke, it might be at a 20. And they might get Scorpio, Lisa, and I don't recommend that for anybody. Just do not poke the bear. But yeah, like there is a continuum, there is a spectrum. And so practice having nerve and saying no in low stakes situations, and build that muscle up
Yeah.
of pushing back against feeling like you have to be nice. So, and speaking of that, like, what has there been a cost for you personally and for Black women in generally of moving away from performative niceness? Because of course capitalism and organizations are built on maintaining the status quo. So have you noticed a cost in your career, and have you noticed, like, at a broader level, a more global level, have you noticed any changes?
Absolutely. I mean, I think when any historically excluded person stops performing niceness, the pushback is often immediate and punishing, right? We get labeled difficult. I mentioned earlier, professional to emotional, hard to work with. And the real risk is jobs, promotions, reputations. Those can all be on the line. And they have been for me. Like I said, I've literally been walked to the door for having too much nerve. But, refusal is also radical because it disrupts scripts that were never written with us in mind. Each no is a small act of resistance that chips away at systems demanding our silence. And the key is that every time one of us breaks the pattern, we widen the path for someone else. And that gets us closer to collective liberation. And why I was so passionate about writing a book about this is to give more people the tools to break the pattern and to give that permission to widen the path for someone that comes behind them. I didn't want to hand my daughter the same world I was handed, which is why it's so important to me to practice nerve in every way that I possibly can. So the cost can be very high. That's why we don't do it alone, and why the more people that understand nice versus nerve, the more people who will be ready to receive nerve, which gets us to real and actual change.
Right. Love that. Love that. And I love that you are thinking of legacy and thinking of your daughter and the future, that you, like you said, that you're handing to her. Like, what world? You obviously can't control the entire world, but you control your sphere of influence. And I love
Yes.
that. And this is a message, honestly, for everybody out there. Um, when you're thinking about what you can do, look within your talents, look within your sphere of influence, look within your circle. Everybody cannot be, I don't know, an Oprah or an Obama, but someone like Amira has a talent for writing and for speaking and communications. And you can hear why she's in comms, right? Just like amazing. Just smooth as butter. Okay. but,
Thank you, friend.
seriously, you can hear. I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I could speak as fluently as that. But you know, you have clearly chosen, Amira, to operate within your zone of genius.
Yeah.
And that's part of what makes this book so powerful. And so thank you so much for sharing it with us. And I know we're getting close to the time for the end of the show. Now, I have this up on the screen for those of you who later on will be listening on audio, right? The price of nice is currently 38% off on Porchlight Books, right? So it is now, I'm reading this, my eyes are so bad, 14/14/23 from today's date, which is 9/02 through 10/28. So, and listen, can we just shout out Porchlight? I love Porchlight so much.
They're the best. Great partners.
They're the best. They're the best. So go to Porchlight, get the book, pre-order it, right? If for some unknown reason, I don't know why you would not want to buy it from Porchlight, go buy it from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Goodreads, all the other places. And definitely, this is my little plug for us for Amira and every other author that is in the pre-order phase, right? Please pre-order the people's books, please. I don't know how else to put it, right? Right. Support authors into success. Support authors into success. Request Amira's book. Not only pre-order it, request it at libraries and wherever else. Request it for your ERGs. A book like this book has the power and potential to change organizational culture at a foundational level. That's how powerful this book is. And so I strongly recommend every organization, right?
Thank you,
yeah, well, absolutely. Go and order it. Recommend it for your ERGs, for your book clubs, and do all of that. So again, you can tell Amira and I are all about verbs. So the verb for today is pre-order. Right?
That's right. Yes.
Right. This feels like Sesame Street. Today's word is
it's an amazing vote of confidence and the best gift you can give an author. Truly.
Yes. So today's numbers are 1423, right? And today's word is pre-order. So on that note, so this show, Amira, last question before we wrap up. This show is about finding space to exhale. So when you finally stop performing niceness for survival, what did your first exhale feel like? Did you feel like you exhaled? Did you feel like you relaxed? What was that moment like for you?
Oh, definitely. It's definitely an exhale. The first thing it made me think of when you just asked that was something that I do every morning. So every day when I send my 12-year-old off to school, this is what it feels like for me. I send her off, and my morning mantra to her is, don't do anything I wouldn't do, which isn't much.
I love it.
And it earns a smirk, sometimes an eye roll, occasionally a chuckle, and it's layered with mischief but hope, because beneath that humor I send her off with and a little bit of a challenge is a benediction of boldness. I grew up in a world where niceness and playing small and being palatable was about survival, and where fear wore the face of righteousness and stepping outside the lines could cost you everything. And so I send her off with that very intentionally. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, which isn't much, because I spent too much of my life playing small and being palatable. And what it really is, I hope, and one day she'll recognize it for the secret weapon that it is permission. Permission to live a life that's not governed by nice, not governed by fear, permission to challenge the story before accepting the moral. It's permission. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, which isn't much, is the release that I now feel every day.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. Are there any like additional practices or I don't know, rituals or like just daily exercises that you do, like in addition to that? Because I'm just curious now. I'm a big fan of that. So yeah, anything else that you can like bless our readers with?
Right. One of my favorite tools that I give in the book is actually this creative journaling exercise. And I'm showing you mine because I have 50 million loving journals around my house and car all the time. And there's something very cognitive and psychological and somatic that happens when you physically write something. So there's actually a 4-week creative journaling exercise that I give people that will help you reimagine the world that we live in and shift your perspective and your way of thinking. And I think when somebody gave me this exercise, I first initially poo-pooed it. I was like, oh my God, a diary. I don't want to do that. But it's not a diary. It's a very, very good practice. It's rooted in a lot of evidence. So in one of the chapters, you're going to get that tool. But journaling can be very powerful to learning to practice nerve overnight to shift your perspective and how you show up in the world. Write things down. There's something very powerful that happens when you do that.
Love it, love it, love it. Yeah, I have journaling exercises. I'm right there. First of all, ditto, a ton of journals all around the house and journaling exercises in my book. It is such, writing is so powerful, like handwriting, old OG cursive writing. It's incredibly healing and very powerful. And you really are, because words are spells. They really are. That's why it's called spelling. And people think that it means the act of putting the letters of the word together, but no, it's the act of putting into the universe what you want. And so yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Journaling is very powerful. So as we come to an end, what is next for you, Miss Amira? Where can people find you? Before we came on, you were telling me a bit about the tour and all the excitement. So this is your time. Tell us everything. Big up yourself, hype up yourself, and let the people know where to find you.
Yes, amirabarger.com, and I'm on all the socials at Amira Barger, just my name. TikTok is where I'm most active, as well as LinkedIn. But yes, the book tour is happening. The book drops 10/28, and there will be physical and virtual book tours, all of which you'll find on amirabarger.com. So my focus is this book and helping people practice more nerve forevermore. So find me out there. I'll see you in TikTok and the LinkedIn streets and at amirabarger.com.
Okay, absolutely love that. And so, Mira, thanks again to everybody who is watching and listening, whether you're team live or team replay. Thank you so much for joining us on Space to Exhale, the podcast. This is an absolutely wonderful episode, and I'm so happy, Amira, that you, I don't know, just blessed us with your brilliance. So, folks, thank you. Tune in every Tuesday to Space Exhale, the podcast, live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook to catch all the vibes. And if you can't make the live show, which of course I would love you to, but if you can't make it, no problem. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and YouTube to catch the replay. And if you've enjoyed the podcast, show it some love. Rate it and leave a review on Apple, rate it on Spotify, subscribe and leave a comment on YouTube. Download it from your favorite podcasting platform, recommend it to somebody, do all the things, just like I'm saying for Amira's book. Do it for Amira's book, my book, the podcast, and other authors and podcasters that you know. And if you want to dive deeper into what Amira and I discussed today, of course, be sure to pre-order The Price of Nice right now. It's currently on sale at porchlightbooks.com. We did have the URL up on the screen, but you do have the freedom to Google, go to porchlightbooks.com, and you can also search. The book will come right up. Also, of course, get a copy of my book, Space to Exhale, available at all the places, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, everywhere, wherever books are sold. And if you have already purchased a copy, I would really love to know what you think. So hop onto the internet and write your girl a little review, and bonus points if you bless me with a review with a photo. And so that's it, folks. So goodbye for now. Thank you for being here. And remember that you are worthy of rest. You are worthy of love, and you are worthy of having time and space to exhale. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.